So last week I had asked you guys to put together some of your favorite Zach Lavine trade proposals, and I shouldn't say just Zach trades because they were trades across the board for the Bulls as a whole, but primarily involving Zach Lavine. And in that video, I mentioned how I would do one of my own trade proposals that I would like to see the Bulls making in a move for Zach Lavine. Trade packages that I feel are realistic, although I'm sure some are going to say that I'm not realistic whatsoever, as the biggest thing I've noticed across Bulls Twitter is just the wide varying beliefs of where Zach's trade value stands and how much the Bulls could net for him in return. I do think there are some that are highly overvaluing him and some that are greatly undervaluing him and what they could net in a return. But be all of that as it may, here are 4 trade proposals that I would love to see the Bulls make in moving on from Zach Lavine based on what I personally perceive to be his trade value, and I would love to hear what you guys think of these trades in the comments below. But real quick, we've got to talk about the sponsor of today's video, Underdog Fantasy, our sponsor for the entire NBA season. I absolutely love this platform. Like really, I would say that even if they weren't a sponsor, because it's super easy to use, and if you're like me and you like making predictions and maybe want to make a little money on the side, then this is it. My personal favorite that I use to play on the app is NBA Pick'ems, and at the time I'm recording this, the Bulls are set to play the Thunder soon, which I'm sure is going to be a loss for the Bulls, but regardless, I'm going to make some wagers on some player stats. I'm going to say Zach scores less than 29.5 points, rebounds, and assists because Zach is a bit checked out and hasn't really been as aggressive on offense. I'm going to go with Vooch grabbing more than 10.5 rebounds, and let's go with one more on the opponent's side, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Yeah, I think it's a safe bet that he's going to score more than 31.5. And so with Pick'ems, you pick higher or lower, and you can win up to 20 times your money in a single night if you pick all 5 of them right. And guys, they're offering viewers on this channel an exclusive offer. If you use the code BULLSCENTRAL, you'll get your first deposit doubled up to $100. Who doesn't want free money, right? It's really that easy. It's also a great way to help support the channel as well. I'll leave a link to the site and the code in the description if you're interested, and let me know which pick you guys make. So the first one I put together is interesting because we heard reports that Zach Lavine would be interested in being traded to the San Antonio Spurs, among other teams. But it's one that I was a little surprised to hear about because Zach has been tired of losing. Part of the reason he wants to leave Chicago is because he doesn't feel they can be a competitive team. And while I get the Spurs have a very respectable organization, they're the winningest franchise in NBA history by win percentage, Hall of Fame coach, future generational talent, and Victor Wembanyama, I get all of that. But this team still has some more losing years ahead of them. And Zach Lavine, who's 28, you would think he'd want to go somewhere else where he can actually win now. But if the reports are true, then I would love to see a trade like this. Now, the other problem with making a trade with the San Antonio Spurs is that it almost makes it impossible to do this if they don't include Kellin Johnson for salary filler purposes. None of their players currently are making enough money to match Lavine's salary unless you want to throw in like 5 or 6 players, which isn't realistic because the Bulls would have to waive a fair amount of the players that they would bring in. And in my opinion, I highly doubt the Spurs would actually move Kellin Johnson. But let's play along for now. So the trade would send Johnson, Doug McBucket, Cedi Osman, and the Spurs would send back to the Bulls first round pick in 2025, that's top 10 protected. I like this trade because you're getting a young up-and-coming player who has his flaws, and he's currently off to a slow start so far this season, but only 24, a talented scorer, can shoot it from outside at a decent clip as well, which the Bulls need, solid rebounder for his size, decent passer too. And then for Doug McDermott and Cedi Osman, I mean, you add even more shooting. They're both expiring deals, so you don't have to commit to them long term if you don't want to, and you can free up that cap space as a result of it, money that would otherwise have gone to Zach Lavine, and you're getting your first round pick back, which you can obviously either use, or now you actually have the pick back and it's owned to you. It's not top 10 protected anymore. You can either trade that pick or trade your pick in 2026 because the Stepien rule would no longer apply now that you have that 2025 pick back. So yes, I would love something like this for the Bulls. For me, I just don't know how willing the Spurs would be to part with Kellin Johnson, who yes, has struggled a bit, but he's younger than Zach Lavine. But at the same time, the Spurs have gotten off to a horrible start and they desperately need offense. Currently the 29th ranked team in offensive rating. For this next one, I've got to trade with the Raptors, another team whose future is uncertain and a team that just doesn't fit well together. In this one, it's going to be Zach and Alex Caruso. Mind you, some are arguing that Caruso's trade value is even higher than Lavine's because of the cheap contract that he has, his hard work ethic and hustle on defense, and also the fact that he's actually having one of his best seasons on offense. So while I get it might not seem realistic for the Bulls to bring in OG Anunoby, someone the Raptors value very highly, and the reported asking price for him being 3 first-round picks at the trade deadline last year, but at the same time, the Bulls also valuing Alex Caruso very highly and believe they can garner a fair amount of picks for him. The trade would also include Gary Trent Jr., an expiring contract, but still a very serviceable player, also young. Grady Dick, young rookie lottery selection, and you would also get the benefits of endless amounts of jokes from his name. And Precious Achiuwa, another young player, another big, also expiring too, so if it doesn't work out, you can always move on from him. It's a lot for the Raptors to be able to do this, and to be honest, I don't even know if they would take this because I'm not sure if Lavine really elevates their offense all that much relative to what they would lose in this trade. And while they would gain some defense with Caruso, they're also losing one of the better two-way players in the NBA in OG Anunoby. But yeah, I would love this trade for the Bulls. I mean, you're getting 3 young players all in their mid to low 20s, players that are actually serviceable and fit a lot of needs for the Bulls and would be a good start to kick off the Bulls rebuild and honestly might even enable them to still be competitive in some regards. The problem though, I don't know if this really makes the Raptors that much better. I do think Siakam and Lavine would be a very good pairing, but if the Raptors are wanting to blow it up themselves, then Zach Lavine and Alex Caruso aren't really going to make sense for them and their new timeline. Obviously, I have to do one with the Miami Heat, another reported destination of interest for Zach. It includes more than just Zach though, but that was really to keep the Bulls under the tax since we know that's a requirement in any trade. So they're sending Zach Lavine, Andre Drummond, and Dalen Terry for Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, Jaime Jaquez, and a second-round pick. Well, I think some will say there is no way the Heat would ever agree to this, it's too much. Not a chance you would also be able to include Tyler Hero in the deal. To that I reply, if the Heat do trade for Zach Lavine, Tyler Hero has to be included. One, for salary matching purposes, but also because Tyler Hero and Zach Lavine, fit-wise, are not really going to work well together. They're fairly redundant in terms of their skill sets and play styles. I would still consider Zach to be a better player. Hero is maybe like 75 to 80% that of Lavine, but Hero is also younger and arguably a more consistent shooter. But the point is, if Zach gets moved to the Miami Heat, Hero is also going to be included in the deal. And then the Bulls also take on Duncan Robinson, which historically over the last couple of seasons was seen as a bad contract given he found himself out of the rotation recently, but he has since stepped up and played much better with Hero being out and also developing his game a bit more than just being a one-dimensional catch-and-shoot shooter. But even then, I wouldn't say it's a very desirable contract. So I'm viewing this more as them doing the Heat a favor by taking this contract off their hands, and in exchange they're also getting Jaime Jaquez, their first-round pick from this past draft, and a future second. I really like Jaquez, and honestly, that might be the only thing that holds this deal up depending on how much the Heat value him. Granted, the Bulls are also giving them a young player and former first-round pick in Dalen Terry, who could still have some upside if maybe given the right opportunities, but Jaquez is clearly the better player, but at that same time, Bulls are giving them Zach Lavine, the best player out of anybody in this entire package. I like this trade for the Bulls because it gives them elite level shooting and some young talent to work with for the future. And then finally, I've got one with the Kings, another reported destination of interest for Lavine. And to be honest, I think him and De'Aaron Fox would be dynamite together in the backcourt. But in exchange for Zach Lavine and Andre Drummond, Drummond being included to keep the Bulls below the tax, but also because the Kings could use a better backup 5. And in return, the Bulls would get Harrison Barnes, Kevin Huerter, Malik Monk, and a first-round pick. Shooters, shooters, shooters galore for the Bulls. My only concern here is whether the Kings would actually want to break up their core when they played so well together last season, going to the playoffs for the first time. Their offense runs so smoothly and efficiently because of all the shooters that they have. But if they're really looking to add another star-level player, a big name, when for a small market like Sacramento is so hard to do, they know that in order to acquire big names, they have to bring them by way of a trade. And so is it worth it to get Zach, a guy in his prime, an established star that can score on all 3 levels? Is it worth making an all-in type push and moving on from some role guys as well as sacrificing a first-round pick for him? I know for some you're going to say, how can you justify giving up Zach Lavine for these 3 role players, journeymen? Well, you have to keep in mind, Zach Lavine's trade value isn't going to be as high as you might think. Not with the way that he's been playing most recently and with the Bulls having little leverage for the large max contract that he has. And yes, 3 role players, but also a first-round pick, which is key for the Bulls who don't have a lot of draft capital. And 3 role players who are all great shooters, some of the best in the league, and high-character guys who know and understand their role. This trade is honestly my favorite of the bunch. I know some have said the Kings would have to include Keegan Murray, but there's no chance that happens. The Kings value him too highly. He's more valuable than Lavine is because of his age and upside, but I still think this is a great haul given the circumstances around Lavine. Let me know what you guys think. Did I cook? Did I overvalue in these packages? Am I being way too unrealistic? Let me know in the comments. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.